weekend with our Sunday showdowns. And we're going to start with what could be the fantasy matchup of the week between the Chargers and the Vikings. Rank, what has caught your eye in this one?
I'm going to say that you start a Minnesota Vikings wide receiver. It's not Justin Jefferson. It's Jordan Addison. And listen, I'm a boomer. I'm old enough to remember when people would just come onto these airways and be like, USC receivers, am I right? Yeah, USC receivers, am I right? They can play football.
They're awesome.
He has scored at least 16 fantasy points in each of his two games this season. He tied a mark set by Percy Harvin back in 2009 as the first Vikings rookie wide receiver to have a touchdown in each of his first two games. He's got a great matchup. This Chargers defense has given up a lot of fantasy production over the first two games. And with Justin Jefferson drawing J.C. Jackson, this is going to be a monster game for Jordan Addison.
I have Addison as a start this week as well, but it's because I say start everyone in this game. The Chargers are the only team this season to allow over 700 passing yards so far. Kirk Cousins, one of two quarterbacks over 700 yards. You're starting both quarterbacks. Justin Jefferson is a must start. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams must start. Start Addison. Osborne is an upside flex in this. Hockenson is a must start. I'd get away from Everett, but even the running backs are volume RB2s with a chance to score in this score fest.
Well, and he talked about that. That's for me. My flex is the favorite of theater nerds everywhere, Alexander Madison. This might be the last chance you can really start Madison in your lineups now that Cam Akers is there. I know the raw numbers might not show it, but teams have actually run the ball pretty well against the Chargers. The Dolphins sort of gave up on it early in week one. Then in week two, the Chargers got run through. Bottom half of the league in rush yards over expectation allowed and rush success per play. I know that sounds fancy. Basically, it means running backs are getting more than the Chargers defense is giving them. And if there's ever a chance to get Alexander Madison back in your lineup, this is probably it. Right now, top scoring quarterback in fantasy is Kirk Cousins. Number 2 is Jordan Love. The Packers taking on the Saints. Rank, will the Packers' fantasy output continue?
I'm going to say beware of A.J. Dillon. We're still wondering about the injury situation with their running backs. So for me, last week, A.J. Dillon comes into a game where he gets close to 70% of the snaps and really didn't do much with it. And I think a big part of the reason why is the Falcons' defense is better than advertised, better than a lot of people thought they were going to be. Not me. Not only did I pick the Falcons to win last week, I picked them to win the division. But listen, this isn't about that. This is another tough defense that they're facing with the New Orleans Saints. So if you have other options, and I know that it's kind of dire right now in the running back situation, I would look other places if I could.
I get it. I have Dillon as a sit this week. On the other side, though, I think Michael Thomas is in play. He is seeing volume with at least 8 targets in each game, and he leads the Saints right now with 2 end zone targets and is top 5 amongst receivers in red zone targets. He's given you at least 11 fantasy points every single week so far as well. So he brings a safe floor, but the ceiling is even higher if he can score a touchdown. He is not a must start. But if you have been considering getting Michael Thomas in your lineup, I think this is a good spot to go ahead and do so.
I have Kendre Miller as a sleeper, making his NFL debut. He was a guy I drafted late in a lot of leagues, thinking the first few weeks with Alvin Kamara out of the lineup, he was going to have an opportunity. This is going to be his chance. I mean, this is a guy who was scouted in part because of his pass-catching upside. I even saw comparisons to Aaron Jones for him. No Jamal Williams means more opportunity for Miller here in week 3. The Packers early on, struggling against running backs. 6th most rushing yards allowed to the position. 2nd most receiving yards allowed to the position. Look, Alvin Kamara is going to be back after this week, so the opportunity probably is less. But there's a chance if you really need running back help, as Rank mentioned, to maybe get Kendre Miller into your lineup. Moving on to the Chiefs and Bears. Chicago's still trying to figure some things out. Not a great time to face the Chiefs. Rank, what do you have for this?
This is the perfect time to face the Chiefs. Once everybody is counting you out, this is why I like Justin Fields this week. But looking at the other side of the football, for the Kansas City Chiefs, Sky Moore, a player that a lot of people gave up on after week 1 because he did not do anything, rallied last week against the Jags, scored a touchdown. The only receiver for this team that have at least 70 receiving yards and a touchdown this season. They're going to pass the ball a lot. The Bears have allowed a lot of production to opposing wide receivers. And if you're in a spot where perhaps you had Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley, some of these running backs, and you're looking for a flex sleeper, I think Sky Moore, who's likely available, could be a good option for you.
The internet thinks I hate Isaiah Pacheco, and they're probably like, here's where you tell us to sit him. You start Isaiah Pacheco this week. His snaps and volume increased last week. He had 12 of the 14 running back carries. But what I like is he's running more routes, and he already has nearly half as many targets as he had all of last season. And the Bears, they've allowed at least 21 fantasy points to a running back in each game this season. And with the Chiefs likely playing with a lead, I think we see Pacheco a lot in the second half.
If you want to take a big swing and maybe get a big reward, try Justin Watson as a deep sleeper. Yeah, the route participation isn't what you would like it to be. It's less than 50% through the first 2 weeks, but he's got a crazy deep average depth of target, nearly 25 yards. He is the field stretcher in this offense. And look, no wide receiver in Kansas City has a high target share. Watson is at 12%. He's right up there with Kadarius Toney. So look, if I'm going to take a chance on a wide receiver in Kansas City because there's no sure thing, I'm going to take the guy who can maybe get you some chunk plays, and that is Justin Watson. Finally, an interesting matchup between the Buffalo Bills and the Washington Commanders, who are undefeated. Brian Robinson says he has a lot more in the tank. Rank, I know you like Brian Robinson. Anything else in this game you're looking at?
Well, I think Brian Robinson kind of comes off as a must start because of the way that the the touches have been distributed. 40 touches this season compared to Antonio Gibson, who has just 9. I know that Buffalo was really good against Josh Jacobs last week, but you know what? Going into the contest in week 2 against the Denver Broncos, that was a very tough run defense. Brian Robinson ran through them. But what I will tell you, I've seen Antonio Gibson being dropped all over the place. So if you have room on your roster to make a move, pick up Antonio Gibson. Don't start him, but put him on your bench, because there is an opportunity here for him to get a lot of targets as a receiver out of the backfield in a game that is expected to be a little bit tougher than their first 2 contests. And here's the thing. If Antonio Gibson goes off, awesome. You don't have to use a waiver claim to pick him up the following week. And if he stinks, drop him, and it's no harm done.
Yeah, I think Brian Robinson is very much so in play this week. So is James Cook on the other side. He's averaging 111 yards per game and is second in the league in yards after contact. I know he hasn't scored a touchdown yet. The internet makes you think that he is not getting any usage at all near the goal line. He's getting more usage than you would anticipate, and he just had a baby girl yesterday, so congrats to him, and maybe the Bills reward him with a touchdown this weekend.
I mean, maybe he could take a photo shoot with it, like, the tight end, Kylan Granson, who
that was
had
amazing,
his first touchdown.
by the way.
I'm going to say you can flex Gabe Davis this week. There's no real clear-cut number 2 target after Stephon Diggs, but Gabe Davis is the closest thing to it, just ahead of James Cook, Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid. And we saw last week, Russell Wilson had success taking shots down the field against this Commanders defense. Russ had 10 attempts of 10 or more yards downfield, turned that into over 200 yards and a couple of touchdowns. Davis is still the lid lifter on this offense, so when Josh Allen wants to push the ball, that's where they're going to go with it.
May I say one thing?
Please.
Because I know the Commanders fans think that I hate their team. If you've seen the graphic, there's one person in NFL media who's picking the Commanders to win this week, and it is me. Good luck.
Definitely.
Although I had you in week 1 too, so it's not the first time. It's not a jinx situation.
Adam Rink. Commanders.
Let's
get back to some more of these Sunday showdowns. And we got this Western theme here. Makes sense because we got the Cowboys heading out to the deserts of Arizona to take on the Cardinals. Florio, what do you like in this one?
Look, I know coming into the year you weren't planning on starting Zach Ertz at all, but I actually think Zach Ertz is a sleeper.
I mean, I drafted him in a couple of weeks.
There you go. He leads the tight end position right now in targets, and through 2 weeks, he is the tight end 7. Look, I don't love the matchup at all against the Cardinals, but against the Cowboys, but if they're bringing pressure, it probably means a lot of quick, short throws, which means more volume for Zach Ertz.
I'm going to stick with the tight end position, and I'm going to go with Fergalicious. That's right, Jake Ferguson. The F is for fantastic. The E is for exciting. The R, whatever. Listen, you got to start. It really is a thing of like, hey, the Cardinals tight end, or the Cardinals do not play well against tight ends. That's a thing. You can start them. But the Cowboys have really focused on getting the ball to the tight end when they're in the red area. And it's almost kind of a problem because all 3 of these guys for the Cowboys have gotten opportunities near the end zone. But I like Jake Ferguson in this one against the Cardinals.
R as in Robert Loggia. I'm going to say you can start Dak Prescott this week. And it's weird because he hasn't had what you consider a huge fantasy week, but he did have 19 points last week for the Cowboys. And the Cardinals, they've given up 200 passing yards to Sam Howell in week 1. They gave up 321 to Daniel Jones with about 250 of those and a pair of touchdowns coming in the second half. The Cowboys are the best offense the Cardinals have faced. So if you have quarterback dilemmas, you're deciding between two guys, I think you give the edge to Dak Prescott this week going against the Redbirds. The Denver Broncos, they're heading to South Beach. Probably not to South Beach, but they are going to Miami to take on the
Miami
Dolphins.
Gardens.
Yeah.
MJ's going to get you now.
MJ Acosta Ruiz, I am sorry. Miami Gardens is where the Broncos are going. Will Denver be able to keep up with that high-powered Broncos or high-powered Dolphins offense? What are you looking at here?
Let's ride this week. I think Russell Wilson is a streamer that you can get into your lineup, especially if you're missing like Anthony Richardson or something this week. 300 passing yards last week, 3 touchdowns. But what I love most is he ran for 56 yards. He looked like the Russell Wilson of old. He has multiple passing touchdowns in every game. And since he has been playing without Nathaniel Hackett, he's averaging over 19 fantasy points per game. And he's going to have to throw to keep up with that high-powered Miami offense. So I like Russ this week.
Aaron Rodgers is not going to stand for your Nathaniel Hackett slander, and I will not stand for people who are not down with Raheem Mostert. Every time that I play this guy, I get paid in full. A big reason why is that thank you. I'm surprised you get that reference, but listen, here's my thing. Mike McDaniel is a part of the Shanahan coaching tree, which loves to run the football. We've seen bursts of Mostert going back to his time in San Francisco, where he is a really effective fantasy running back. And as long as he is healthy and available, we saw what the Commanders were able to do last week against this defense. Make sure you are starting. I said that right, Puma. Make sure you are starting Raheem Mostert. Some jokes are just for us.
I like the running back on the other side, and that's Javonte Williams. And especially if the Broncos defense can keep this game close and avoid a negative game script here. The opportunities have been split in the backfield in terms of the snaps. Samaje Perine has been the passing down back. Javonte Williams getting most of the rushing opportunity. And the Dolphins got gashed by the Chargers running game in week 1. They were slightly better against the Patriots, but even Ramondre Stevenson had a halfway decent game. So as long as this game is within striking distance, I think this is a big opportunity for Javonte Williams to have a big game in the early part of the season. Falcons and the Lions. A lot of the fantasy world frustrated by Kyle Pitts. This feels like the last stand for Kyle Pitts in fantasy for a lot of us. We'll see how it goes. Of course, Jahmyr Gibbs, another guy on the other side there. Florio, anybody particular you have your eye on?
You highlighted one tight end. I'm going to go with the tight end on the other side and tell you to start Sam Laporta in this one. He was the tight end 8 in each week so far, and on the season, he is the tight end 4 overall, playing over 80% of the snaps, getting consistent volume, but I think he can carve out a larger role as the season progresses and he gets more comfortable, not only in this offense, but just in the NFL as a whole.
I'm going to say that it's a must-start week for Jahmyr Gibbs. And you've heard me say this before, so it should come as no shock. But I understand that with David Montgomery out, we hope there's a huge uptick for Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't think it's going to be huge, but I think it's going to be significant enough that you need to get him into your lineup. Craig Ferguson is going to be there. Craig Ferguson. Yeah, Craig Ferguson. He's going to be Ray Romano. We've been really diving into the former CBS employees this week. But there is going to be enough opportunity for Jahmyr Gibbs against this Falcons defense, which is better than a lot of people think that they are. But they have to get him the football. They have to pass him the ball. If Amon-Ra St. Brown is battling an injury, that means the targets are going to get distributed a little bit more. So I love Gibbs this week.
David Letterman.
Gibbs, oh my gosh, Gibbs, NCIS. See, it's all CBS, baby.
There it is. I say Mac Hollins is a sleeper. We keep wondering where exactly the football is going in Atlanta's passing game. It's been going to Mac Hollins. He has the same number of targets as Drake London. He has a higher percentage of catchable targets than Drake London and Kyle Pitts. 36% of the air yards. He's gotten a third of the play action targets. I know we want it to be Kyle Pitts. I hope it is Kyle Pitts. But in the meantime, it has been Mac Hollins. And in a game that should feature a lot of throws on both sides, Mac Hollins should see plenty of targets.
That's a guy that would be great to have on your bench when the bye weeks start coming up, because 100%. That's going to be a streamable guy.
Absolutely,
sure. That's a great call.
Because he's getting a lot of
Please
work.
Throw to Kyle Pitts this week.
Nah, it's over. It's done.
This is the last stand, really. It is for Kyle Pitts. All right, we got the Panthers and the Seahawks. Carolina will not have their starting quarterback. Bryce Young has been ruled out. The Seahawks with some injuries on their side of the football as well. Florio, what's on your cheat sheet for this one?
I think this is a week where you could stream the Seattle Seahawks defense and go ahead and get them in your starting lineup. The Panthers you see there, they have the fewest points per game this year. They have the fewest passing yards. And Andy Dalton has thrown 1 touchdown pass in his last 3 starts, and he's topped 230 passing yards once in his last 10 starts. Their receivers are struggling mightily to get open right now. I think you pick on the Panthers and you start the Seahawks defense.
I don't know. A lot of that had to do with the Bears. I think Miles Sanders is a great start this week because that Seahawks defense is facing a lot of injuries, so I like that. But another big injury, DK Metcalf has been battling injuries this week. He didn't practice on Wednesday or Thursday, which is why I like Tyler Lockett in this game. I know that we always love Tyler Lockett because he's amazing. Even better this week, even if DK is able to go and ready to go, I'm going to go with Tyler Lockett.
I'm going to say beware of Geno Smith. I mean, part of it is that you mentioned the offensive injuries that the Seahawks have right now, but on top of it, the pass defense for Carolina is actually not bad. Their run defense, though, is a little bit more suspect. I think this is a week where Kenneth Walker does a whole lot of work, and as long as the game goes as expected, they won't need Geno Smith to do a whole lot. So if you've got 2 guys you're deciding between Geno Smith and someone else, maybe go with the other guy, because I don't know if it's a huge game for Geno Smith. They call Jets-Patriots a rivalry. It is. Sort of in the same way that grass and lawnmowers have a rivalry. Patriots have won 14 straight against the Jetropolitans. Neither offense looked great last week. Florio, anybody that you are keeping an eye on here?
It pains me to say, but I think you should sit Zach Wilson in this one. In week 1, it took a catch-of-the-year touchdown for him to come through. Last week, it was a Garrett Wilson, sorry. It was a 68-yard receiving touchdown. Zach Wilson struggles mightily against the Patriots, so I don't expect a lot there. And then the Patriots have a tough secondary, and they've only allowed 2 touchdowns to wide receivers this year, which is extremely impressive considering they've played Miami and Philadelphia.
I'm not going. No. I'm starting him. I'm not doing it. He catches touchdowns. That's all I need. Just go out there, catch a touchdown. For me, I know there'll be somebody on Twitter who will come up and be like, well, I got Puka Nacua, Justin Jefferson. Okay, fine. Yeah, then you can sit Garrett Wilson. But I think for most lineups that I've seen with people asking me this question, I'm still starting him. I don't like it, but I'm starting him.
I'm starting Breece Hall, and last week was awful, just the 4 touches for 9 yards. The Patriots' run defense has just been so-so this year. But more importantly, if the Jets want to stay in this game, they have to get Breece Hall more involved. They cannot let Zach Wilson throw it 25 to 30 times. So I think that alone gives him more volume. And volume is really all we want for a guy like Breece Hall. He can pop a couple of big runs if you give him enough touches. The Jags offense scored just 9 points last week. Do they bounce back this week, Florio, or the Texans offense continue their fantasy sleeper run?
I want to go with the Texans. I'm saying start Nico Collins here. Through 2 games, he's averaging 10 targets, 113 yards, and just under 21 fantasy points per game. And the Texans are one of 2 teams with over 90 pass attempts, and they all go to the wide receivers. In a game where they could be chasing points, get Nico Collins in your lineup.
So for all those reasons, that's why C.J. Stroud is a sleeper for me. He threw for over 300 yards last week. And again, if this game breaks as anticipated with the Jags getting up to a decent enough lead, C.J. Stroud's going to be throwing the football. So, yeah, I'm streaming him if I can.
On the other side, I say you start Travis Etienne this week. The Houston Texans defense is improving, no surprise under D'Amico Ryans, but you're seeing more success running against them than throwing against them. I think game script becomes a factor. The Texans have been falling behind, in which case I think you're going to see Etienne and the Jaguars trying to grind some clock and getting a lot of touches there in the second half.